Welcome to the Story Lab. I hope you enjoy this story. Let's begin. I zipped up my suitcase, double-checking that I had everything I needed for my upcoming business trip. As I made my way downstairs, I heard Lila's voice floating from the kitchen. "Oh, don't worry about Ethan," she was saying. "He'll be gone all week. We'll have the place to ourselves." I paused, listening. Who was she talking to? "I can't wait for our girls' night," Lila continued. "It's been too long since we've all gotten together." I relaxed, feeling a bit silly for my momentary suspicion. Of course, she was just planning a get-together with her friends. I entered the kitchen, and Lila quickly ended her call. "Hey, honey," I said, giving her a quick kiss. "All set for your girls' night?" Lila's smile was dazzling. "Absolutely. We're going to have a blast. You know how it is when the girls get together." I nodded, grabbing an apple from the fruit bowl. "Just don't party too hard. Remember what happened last time?" She laughed, waving her hand dismissively. "Oh, Ethan, you worry too much. We're all grown women. We can handle ourselves." I shrugged, taking a bite of my apple. "If you say so. Anyway, I should get going. My flight's in a few hours." Lila gave me a hug, her perfume lingering in the air. "Have a safe trip, honey. I'll miss you." As I drove to the airport, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Lila had been distant lately, always on her phone, always busy with her influencer work. But I trusted her. We'd been married for 5 years, and I knew she loved me. I arrived at the airport and made my way to the check-in counter. The woman behind the desk frowned as she typed on her computer. "I'm sorry, Mr. Cooper, but there seems to be a problem with your flight," she said. I leaned forward, concern creasing my brow. "What kind of problem?" She turned the screen towards me. "Your flight has been canceled due to unexpected weather conditions. We can rebook you for tomorrow, but there are no more flights out today." I sighed. "Is there really nothing available?" She shook her head apologetically. "I'm afraid not, sir. The storm system is quite severe." I thanked her and stepped away from the counter, pulling out my phone to call my boss. "Hey, John." "Yeah, it's Ethan. Listen, my flight's been canceled." "No, they can't get me out until tomorrow at the earliest." "I know. I'm sorry. Is there any way we can reschedule the meeting?" After a few minutes of back and forth, we agreed to postpone the trip entirely. I hung up, feeling a mix of relief and frustration. Then, an idea struck me. Why not surprise Lila? I could pick up some wine, maybe her favorite takeout, and join their girls' night. With a smile, I headed back to my car. The drive home was quick, traffic mercifully light. I stopped at our favorite wine shop, picking up a bottle of the expensive red Lila loved. As I approached our house, I noticed several unfamiliar cars parked along the street. "Looks like quite the party," I muttered to myself. I parked a little way down the street, not wanting to give away the surprise. As I walked up to the house, I could hear music thumping from inside. The curtains were drawn, but I could see flashes of light, like someone had set up a party lighting system. I unlocked the front door quietly, slipping inside. The music was louder now, mixed with laughter and voices. I set down the wine in my bags, moving towards the living room. That's when I heard it. A man's voice, low and husky, saying something I couldn't quite make out. My heart began to race. What was going on? I crept closer to the living room, the pit in my stomach growing with each step. The door was slightly ajar, and I peered through the crack. What I saw shattered my world. Lila, my wife, was in the arms of another man. They were kissing passionately, their hands roaming over each other's bodies. Around them, 3 other women were in various states of undress, laughing and drinking. I pushed the door open, my hand shaking. "Lila." My voice came out as a hoarse whisper. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to me. Lila's face, flushed with alcohol and arousal, twisted into a sneer. "Ethan," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "You're not invited." The man holding her, who I now recognized as David Cross, a local real estate mogul, laughed. Well, if it isn't the cuckold himself." I stood there, frozen, as the reality of the situation crashed over me. My wife, the woman I loved and trusted, had been cheating on me. And not just cheating, but hosting an orgy in our home. How long? I managed to choke out. Lila rolled her eyes, extracting herself from David's arms. Oh, please. Like you didn't know. One of the other women, who I vaguely recognized as Vanessa Miller, giggled. He really had no idea, did he? God, how pathetic. I felt my face burning with humiliation and rage. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. David sauntered over to me, his smug grin making me want to punch him. Listen, Ethan, why don't you be a good boy and run along? The adults are having fun here. Something inside me snapped. I pulled out my phone and started recording. What the hell do you think you're doing? Lila shrieked, lunging for the phone. I held it out of her reach. Getting evidence, I said, my voice cold. Now, all of you, get out of my house. Now. David laughed. Or what? You'll cry to mommy? I met his eyes, letting all my anger and disgust show. No, I'll take legal action. Against all of you. I'm sure your wives would be very interested in this footage. The smiles faded from the women's faces. They began scrambling for their clothes, suddenly looking much less confident. I turned to Lila. As for you, don't bother coming back. We're done. She opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off. I said we're done. Get your things and get out. You have until I come back to leave, or I'll have you removed. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the house. As I got into my car, I could hear shouting and arguing from inside. I didn't care. I drove away, my mind racing with plans for revenge. Lila and her friends thought they could humiliate me and get away with it. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I drove aimlessly for hours, my mind replaying the scene I had witnessed over and over again. The image of Lila in David's arms, the sound of their mocking laughter, it all burned in my brain like a brand. As the initial shock wore off, a cold, calculated anger took its place. I found myself parked at a lookout point overlooking the city. The lights twinkled below, oblivious to the turmoil in my heart. I pulled out my phone and watched the video I had taken. The sound of their laughter, their cruel words, fueled the fire of my rage. You're not invited, Lila's voice sneered from the recording. I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. How long had this been going on? How long had I been the butt of their jokes, the fool they laughed about behind my back? A notification popped up on my screen. A message from Lila. Ethan, please come home. We need to talk. I laughed bitterly. Now she wanted to talk? Now that she had been caught red-handed? I typed out a reply, my fingers flying over the keyboard. There's nothing to talk about. I meant what I said. We're done. Her response came almost immediately. Don't be like this. It was just a bit of fun. You're overreacting. My blood boiled. Overreacting? I had walked in on my wife having an orgy in our home, and she thought I was overreacting? A bit of fun? I typed back. Is that what you call betraying your husband? Humiliating me in front of your friends? Don't contact me again. My lawyer will be in touch. I turned off my phone, not wanting to see her response. The weight of what had happened crashed down on me. My marriage was over. The life I had built, the future I had planned. It was all gone in an instant. But as I sat there, staring out at the city lights, a plan began to form in my mind. Lila and her friends thought they could treat me like this and get away with it. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I started my car and drove to a nearby hotel. I needed a place to think, to plan. As I checked in, the receptionist gave me a concerned look. Are you all right, sir? She asked. You look a bit upset. I forced a smile. I'm fine. Just a long day. In my room, I sat at the desk and opened my laptop. It was time to gather information. I started with David Cross, the smug bastard who had been all over my wife. A quick search revealed he was a prominent real estate mogul, known for his flashy lifestyle and questionable business practices. Next, I looked up Lila's friends. Vanessa Miller, Sophie Lang, and Rachel Green. All of them seemed to have perfect lives on the surface. Loving husbands, successful careers, active social media presences. But I knew better now. I knew the rot that lay beneath their polished exteriors. As I dug deeper, I realized I needed help. This kind of in-depth investigation was beyond my capabilities. That's when I remembered Sam Parker, an old friend from college who had become a private investigator. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but if anyone could help me, it would be Sam. I found his number and dialed, my heart pounding as the phone rang. Parker Investigations, a gruff voice answered. Sam? It's Ethan. Ethan Cooper. There was a pause. Ethan? Damn, it's been a while. What can I do for you? I took a deep breath. I need your help, Sam. It's about my wife and some friends of hers. Sam's tone changed, becoming more serious. What happened, Ethan? I told him everything. The canceled flight, coming home early, the scene I had walked in on. As I spoke, my voice trembled with a mix of anger and pain. Jesus, Ethan, Sam said when I finished. I'm sorry, man. That's rough. I need information, Sam, I said, my voice hardening. Everything you can find on Lila, David Cross, and her friends. I want to know every skeleton in their closets, every dirty secret they're hiding. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Ethan, why do you want revenge so bad? I gripped the phone tighter. They humiliated me, Sam. They laughed at me, called me weak and gullible. I won't let them get away with it. Sam sighed. All right, Ethan, I'll help you, but promise me you won't do anything illegal. I don't want to see you get in trouble. I promise, I said, though a part of me wasn't sure I could keep that promise. How soon can you start? I'll begin right away, Sam replied. Give me a few days to dig up what I can. I'll call you when I have something. After hanging up, I leaned back in my chair, feeling a glimmer of hope for the first time since I had walked in on Lila and her friends. They thought they knew me, thought I was weak and easily dismissed. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I spent the next few days in a haze of anger and determination. I ignored Lila's calls and messages, each one more desperate than the last. I contacted a divorce lawyer, setting the wheels in motion to end my marriage. On the fourth day, Sam called. Ethan, I've got something, he said. You might want to sit down for this. I settled into a chair, my heart racing. I'm ready, Sam. Tell me everything. What Sam told me over the next hour made my blood run cold. David Cross, it turned out, was involved in far more than just shady real estate deals. There were whispers of money laundering, of bribes paid to city officials to look the other way on building code violations. As for Lila's friends, their perfect lives were anything but. Vanessa Miller had been embezzling from her company for years. Sophie Lang was addicted to prescription painkillers, often trading sexual favors for pills. And Rachel Green had been having an affair with her teenage stepson. Jesus, I muttered as Sam finished his report. They're monsters. What are you going to do with this information, Ethan? Sam asked, concern evident in his voice. I stared out the window, my mind racing with possibilities. I'm going to make them pay, Sam. I'm going to show the world who they really are. Ethan, be careful, Sam warned. These people have money and influence. They could make your life hell if they wanted to. I laughed, a cold, humorless sound. They already have, Sam. Now it's my turn. As I hung up the phone, a plan began to form in my mind. Lila and her friends thought they were untouchable, thought they could do whatever they wanted without consequences. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I opened my laptop and began to write, pouring out every detail of what had happened, every piece of information Sam had uncovered. When I was done, I had a document that would shatter their carefully constructed facades. My finger hovered over the send button. Once I did this, there would be no going back. But as I remembered the sound of their laughter, the cruel glint in Lila's eyes as she told me I wasn't invited, I hit send. The document went out to the husbands of Lila's friends, to David Cross's business partners, to local news outlets. I sat back, my heart pounding, and waited for the storm to break. It didn't take long. Within hours, my phone was buzzing with notifications. Social media exploded with the scandal. I watched from afar as their perfect lives crumbled around them. Lila called, her voice frantic. Ethan, what have you done? How could you do this to me? I laughed. How could I? How could you, Lila? You brought this on yourself. As I hung up, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The road ahead would be difficult, I knew that. But for the first time since that fateful night, I felt in control. Lila and her friends had thought they could walk all over me. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. The initial shock and pain of Lila's betrayal had hardened into a cold, unyielding resolve. I checked my phone, scrolling through the notifications. The story had blown up overnight, just as I had hoped. I opened my laptop and began to dig deeper. Sam's information had been a goldmine, but I knew there had to be more. I started with David Cross, the smug bastard who had been all over my wife. A quick search revealed a treasure trove of negative press. Complaints from tenants about unsafe living conditions, whispers of bribery and corruption. I compiled it all, creating a dossier that painted a damning picture of the man Lila had chosen over me. Next, I turned my attention to Vanessa Miller. Her company's stock had taken a nosedive following the revelation of her embezzlement. I found forum posts from angry investors, demanding answers. I added their comments to my growing file. Sophie Lang's addiction had become front-page news. I discovered old police reports, incidents that had been swept under the rug. DUIs, public intoxication, all neatly covered up by her influential family. Not anymore. And Rachel Green. Her affair with her stepson had sparked a firestorm of controversy. I found social media posts from outraged parents at the boys' school, calls for her to be fired from her job as a teacher. As I compiled all this information, a plan began to form in my mind. Exposing their secrets was just the first step. Now, I needed to make sure they felt the full weight of their actions. I picked up my phone and dialed Sam's number. He answered on the second ring. "Ethan, what's up?" "Sam, I need more," I said, my voice tight with determination. "We've only scratched the surface." Sam sighed. "Ethan, don't you think you've done enough? The story's everywhere. Their lives are in shambles." "It's not enough," I growled. "I want to know everything. Every dirty secret, every skeleton in their closets. Can you do that for me?" There was a long pause. "Ethan, this is dangerous territory. These people have money and connections. They could make your life hell." I laughed bitterly. "They already have, Sam. Now it's my turn. Will you help me or not?" Another pause. "All right, Ethan, but promise me you'll be careful. I'll dig deeper, see what else I can find." "Thanks, Sam. I owe you." After hanging up, I turned back to my laptop. I had work to do. I started by creating fake social media accounts, planning to use them to spread the information further. As I worked, my phone buzzed. A text from Lila. "Ethan, please. We need to talk. This has gone too far." I ignored it, focusing on my task. Hours passed as I meticulously built my case against them, compiling evidence and planning my next moves. By the time night fell, I had a comprehensive plan. I would release the information in stages, maximizing the damage. First, I'd target their personal lives, then their careers, and finally, their reputations. As I closed my laptop, a smile spread across my face. Lila and her friends thought they knew me. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The next morning, I woke early, ready to set my plan in motion. I checked my phone to find several missed calls from Lila and her friends. I deleted them without listening. I called Sam. "Morning, Ethan," he answered, sounding tired. "I've got more for you." "Let's hear it," I said, sitting up straighter. "David Cross has been bribing city officials to overlook code violations in his buildings. I've got names, dates, amounts. It's all here." My heart raced. Perfect. What else? Vanessa Miller's embezzlement goes deeper than we thought. She's been siphoning money into offshore accounts for years. And Sophie Lang? Her pill addiction is just the tip of the iceberg. She's been visiting some high-end escort services, spending thousands a month. I nodded, taking notes. And Rachel? Sam hesitated. Rachel's affair with her stepson. "Ethan, there's evidence it started before he was legal. We're talking potential criminal charges here." My blood ran cold. Jesus, these people. "Ethan," Sam's voice was serious. "This is big. Really big. Are you positive?" I thought of Lila's sneering face, of David's mocking laughter. "I'm sure, Sam. They brought this on themselves." After hanging up, I spent the next few hours compiling the new information. By midday, I was ready. I started with David Cross. I leaked the bribery information to a local investigative journalist I knew. Within hours, it was headline news. Next, I anonymously tipped off Vanessa's company about her offshore accounts. I watched with satisfaction as the company's stock plummeted. For Sophie, I sent evidence of her escort service visits to her husband and parents. Her pristine society image would never recover. And Rachel, I hesitated. The potential legal implications were serious. In the end, I decided to send the information to the school board and let them handle it. As the day wore on, my phone exploded with notifications. The story was everywhere. Social media was ablaze with outrage and shock. Late that night, there was a pounding on my hotel room door. I opened it to find Lila, her eyes wild and mascara streaked down her face. "How could you?" she screamed, pushing past me into the room. "You've ruined everything." I closed the door calmly. "I ruined everything? That's rich, coming from you." Lila whirled on me. "It was just a bit of fun. You didn't have to destroy our lives over it." "A bit of fun?" I said, my voice dangerously low. "You humiliated me. You and your friends treated me like a joke." "Well, who's laughing now, Lila?" She collapsed onto the bed, sobbing. "Please, Ethan, make it stop. I'll do anything." I looked at her, this woman I had once loved, and felt nothing but cold contempt. "It's too late for that, Lila. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it." "What do you want from me?" she wailed. I walked to the door and opened it. "I want you to leave. We're done, Lila. For good." As she stumbled out, still crying, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The game wasn't over yet, but I was winning, and I intended to see it through to the bitter end. The morning after my confrontation with Lila, I woke up feeling oddly refreshed. I checked my phone, scrolling through the barrage of notifications. The story had exploded overnight, just as I'd planned. I dialed Sam's number, eager for an update. "Morning, Ethan," he answered, his voice groggy. "You're up early." "Can't sleep," I replied. "What's the latest?" Sam sighed. "It's chaos out there, man. David Cross is facing multiple investigations. The feds are involved now. Vanessa Miller's been suspended pending an internal audit. Sophie Lang's husband filed for divorce this morning. And Rachel, well, the police are looking into the situation with her stepson." I nodded. "Good. They're getting what they deserve." "Ethan," Sam's voice was hesitant. "Don't you think this is enough? You've made your point." I gripped the phone tighter. "No, Sam. It's not enough. Not yet." After hanging up, I opened my laptop and got to work. I had more ammunition to deploy. First, I focused on David Cross. I'd held back some of the more damning evidence, waiting for the right moment. Now, I leaked documents showing he'd knowingly rented out apartments with dangerous mold infestations, putting families at risk. Next, I turned to Vanessa Miller. I released emails showing she'd been cooking the books for years, implicating several other high-ranking executives in her company. For Sophie Lang, I had saved the most shocking revelation for last. I anonymously tipped off a tabloid about her secret love child, hidden away in a private school in Switzerland. And Rachel, I hesitated again. The situation with her stepson was already a powder keg. But then I remembered her cruel laughter, the way she looked at me with such disdain. I sent an anonymous email to the local news station, hinting at the full extent of her relationship with the boy. As I worked, my phone buzzed incessantly. I ignored the calls from Lila and her friends, but one name caught my eye. David Cross. Curiosity got the better of me. I answered. "You son of a bitch." David's voice was a low growl. "You think you can do this to me?" I laughed, cold and humorless. "I'm not doing anything to you, David. Your own actions are catching up with you." "I'll destroy you," he snarled. "When I'm done with you, you'll wish you'd never been born." "Bring it on," I replied, my voice steady. "You've already taken everything from me. I have nothing left to lose." I hung up, my heart racing. David's threat should have scared me, but instead, it fueled my determination. I wasn't going to back down now. Hours passed as I continued my work, strategically releasing information, watching as the chaos unfolded. By evening, my phone was ringing nonstop. I ignored most of the calls, But when Sam's name flashed on the screen, I answered. Ethan, things are getting out of hand, Sam said, his voice urgent. There are reporters camped outside your house. Lila's being hounded everywhere she goes. David Cross is making threats. You need to be careful. I appreciate your concern, Sam, I replied, but I can handle myself. After hanging up, I sat back, considering my next move. The seeds of discord had been sown. Now, it was time to watch them grow. I ordered room service and settled in for the night, my laptop open, monitoring the fallout. As I ate, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at the Bluebird Cafe tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone. V. Vanessa Miller. I stared at the message, weighing my options. It could be a trap, but my curiosity was piqued. What did she want? I typed out a reply. I'll be there. The next day, I arrived at the Bluebird Cafe early, choosing a table with a clear view of the entrance. At exactly 2 p.m., Vanessa walked in. She looked terrible, her usual polished appearance replaced by dark circles under her eyes and disheveled hair. She slid into the seat across from me, her eyes darting around nervously. Ethan, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You have to stop this. I leaned back, studying her. Why should I? Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. You don't understand. These people, they're dangerous. David Cross, he's not who you think he is. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, and who is he? She glanced around again before leaning in closer. He's got connections, Ethan. Dangerous ones. The kind of people who make problems disappear. Are you threatening me, Vanessa? I asked, my voice cold. She shook her head frantically. No, I'm warning you. For your own good. Please, Ethan, let this go before someone gets hurt. I stood up, looking down at her. The only people getting hurt are the ones who deserve it. You made your bed, Vanessa. Now lie in it. As I walked out of the cafe, I could hear Vanessa's muffled sobs behind me, but I felt no sympathy. They had shown me no mercy. Why should I show them any? Back in my hotel room, I pulled out my phone and dialed Sam's number. Sam, I need you to look into David Cross's connections. Vanessa hinted at something dangerous. I want to know what we're dealing with. Sam sighed heavily. Ethan, maybe it's time to back off. You've made your point. No, I said firmly. I'm seeing this through to the end. Will you help me or not? There was a long pause before Sam replied, All right, I'll see what I can dig up. But Ethan, be careful. This is getting serious. As I hung up, I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. The game was escalating, the stakes getting higher. But I was ready. Lila and her friends had underestimated me once. They wouldn't make that mistake again. The next morning, I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing incessantly. I grabbed it, squinting at the screen. It was Sam. Ethan, turn on the news. Now. I fumbled for the remote, flicking on the TV. My jaw dropped as I saw the headline scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Real estate mogul David Cross arrested in massive corruption scandal. The news anchor's voice filled the room. In a shocking turn of events, prominent real estate developer David Cross was arrested early this morning on charges of bribery, fraud, and racketeering. Sources close to the investigation say that anonymous tips led to the discovery of a vast network of corruption involving city officials and dangerous criminal elements. I sat back, a mix of satisfaction and disbelief washing over me. I had set the ball rolling, but this was beyond my wildest expectations. My phone buzzed again. It was Lila. What have you done? Her voice was shrill, panicked. The police were just here, Ethan. They're asking questions about David, about all of us. I laughed, a cold, humorless sound. I haven't done anything, Lila. The truth is finally coming out. That's all. You bastard, she hissed. You've ruined everything. I'll never forgive you for this. Funny, I replied, my voice hard. I was just thinking the same thing about you. I hung up, turning my attention back to the TV. The story was everywhere, dominating every channel. David Cross's face was plastered across the screen, his usual smug expression replaced by shock and fear as he was led away in handcuffs. As the day wore on, more details emerged. Vanessa Miller had been taken in for questioning. Sophie Lang's husband had gone public with her infidelities, painting a damning picture of her character. And Rachel, well, the police were now officially investigating her relationship with her stepson. I watched it all unfold with a satisfaction. They had thought they were untouchable, that they could do whatever they wanted without consequences. They were learning how wrong they were. Mid-afternoon, my phone rang again. It was Sam. "Ethan, this is getting out of hand," he said, his voice tight with worry. "David Cross's arrest. There's talk of mob connections. This is dangerous territory." I paced the room, adrenaline coursing through my veins. "I'm not backing down, Sam. They brought this on themselves." Sam sighed heavily. "I know you're hurt, Ethan, but this vendetta, it's consuming you. Is it really worth it?" I paused, considering his words. Was it worth it? I thought of Lila's sneering face, of David's mocking laughter, of the utter humiliation I had felt. "Yes," I said firmly, "it's worth it." After hanging up, I turned back to my laptop. The story was spreading like wildfire on social media. I had created several anonymous accounts, and now I used them to fan the flames, dropping hints and spreading rumors. As evening fell, I ordered room service and settled in front of the TV. The news was still dominated by the scandal. Experts were being brought in to discuss the implications, to speculate on how deep the corruption went. My phone buzzed with a text. It was from an unknown number. "You think you've won? This isn't over. Watch your back." I stared at the message, a chill running down my spine. Was it from David? One of his associates? For the first time, a flicker of doubt crept into my mind. Had I gone too far? I shook off the feeling. No, I couldn't back down now. I was in too deep. I had to see this through to the end. The next morning, I woke early and headed out. I needed to see the fallout for myself. As I walked down the street, I could feel eyes on me. People were whispering, pointing. The story had spread beyond the news, becoming the talk of the town. I passed by Lila's favorite coffee shop. Through the window, I could see her sitting alone, her head in her hands. For a moment, I felt a pang of something, not quite regret, but a twinge of what we had once been. Then I remembered her cruel words, her mocking laughter, and the feeling passed. As I turned the corner, I nearly ran into Vanessa Miller. She looked terrible, her eyes red-rimmed and wild. "You," she hissed, grabbing my arm. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I shook her off, my voice cold. "I've done nothing but expose the truth, Vanessa. You did this to yourselves." She laughed, a high, hysterical sound. "The truth? You don't know the half of it, Ethan. You've stumbled into something much bigger than you realize. David's friends. They're not the kind of people you want to cross." I felt a flicker of unease, but I pushed it down. "Is that a threat?" Vanessa's eyes darted around nervously. "It's a warning. For your own good. Back off, Ethan, before it's too late." As she hurried away, I stood there, her words echoing in my mind. For a moment, I considered heeding her warning. But then I thought of everything they had done, everything they had taken from me. No, I couldn't stop now. I was going to see this through, no matter the cost. I pulled out my phone and dialed Sam's number. "Sam, I need you to dig deeper into David Cross's connections. There's more going on here than we realize." Sam's voice was hesitant. "Ethan, maybe it's time to step back. This is getting dangerous." I gripped the phone tighter. "No, Sam. I'm seeing this through. Can you help me or not?" There was a long pause before Sam sighed. "All right, but be careful, Ethan. I mean it." After hanging up, I headed back to my hotel room. The streets were buzzing with gossip, everyone talking about the scandal. I caught snippets of conversations as I walked. "Did you hear about David Cross? I always knew there was something off about that Lila woman. Poor Ethan Cooper. Can you imagine walking in on that?" I smiled. They had no idea. Back in my room, I turned on the TV. The news was still dominated by the scandal. A reporter was standing outside the police station where David was being held. Sources close to the investigation say that Mr. Cross may have ties to organized crime. The extent of these connections is still unclear, but I leaned forward, listening intently. This was new information. Had Sam uncovered something? My phone buzzed. A text from Lila. We need to talk. Now. Meet me at our spot in an hour. I stared at the message, weighing my options. It could be a trap, but my curiosity got the better of me. I texted back a simple, okay, and got ready to leave. An hour later, I was at our spot, a small park where Lila and I used to have picnics when we first started dating. She was already there, pacing nervously. Ethan, she said as I approached. You have to stop this. I laughed coldly. Stop what, Lila? I'm not doing anything. The truth is coming out. That's all. She grabbed my arm, her eyes wild. You don't understand. David, he's dangerous. More dangerous than you know. He has connections, Ethan. The kind of connections that make people disappear. I shook her off. Is that a threat? It's a warning, she hissed. For your own good. Please, Ethan. I know I hurt you. But this is too much. People are going to get hurt. I stared at her, searching for any sign of the woman I had loved. All I saw was fear and desperation. You should have thought about that before you decided to humiliate me, I said coldly. You made your choices, Lila. Now live with the consequences. As I walked away, I could hear her calling after me, pleading, but I didn't look back. I couldn't afford to show weakness now. Back at the hotel, I found Sam waiting for me in the lobby. We need to talk, he said. I've found something. Up in my room, Sam spread out a series of documents on the bed. David Cross isn't just involved with the mob, he said. He's a key player. Money laundering, extortion, you name it. And Ethan, he's got people in high places. Judges, politicians, even some cops. I felt a chill run down my spine. What are you saying, Sam? He looked at me, his eyes serious. I'm saying you've kicked a hornet's nest, Ethan. These people, they don't play by the rules. They'll do whatever it takes to protect themselves. I sat down heavily on the bed. So what do? We need to be smart about this. We can't stop now, but we need to be careful. I've got some contacts in the FBI. Maybe it's time to bring them in. I nodded slowly. Do it. But Sam, be careful. I don't want you getting caught in the crossfire. He gave me a smile. Too late for that, buddy. We're in this together now. As Sam left to make his calls, I turned back to the TV. The news was showing footage of David being led into court for his bail hearing. He looked haggard, his usual confidence gone. For a moment, I felt a flicker of satisfaction. Then I remembered Lila's warning and felt a surge of determination. They had tried to break me, to humiliate me. Now it was their turn to feel the pain. No matter what it took, I was going to see this through to the end. The next few days passed in a blur of news reports, clandestine meetings with Sam, and an ever-present sense of tension. The scandal had grown beyond anything I could have imagined, ensnaring not just Lila and her friends, but reaching into the highest levels of local government. I was in my hotel room, scrolling through the latest news updates, when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello? I answered cautiously. Is this Ethan Cooper? A woman's voice asked. Yes, who's this? My name is Jessica Reynolds. I'm an attorney. I've been following your case, and I think we should talk. I hesitated. What about? About protecting you, Mr. Cooper, and about making sure justice is served. We arranged to meet at a small cafe the next day. As I hung up, I felt a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Was this another trap, or could this be the ally I needed? The next morning, I arrived at the cafe early, choosing a table with a clear view of the entrance. At exactly 10 a.m., a woman walked in. She was tall, with short, dark hair and sharp eyes that scanned the room before landing on me. Mr. Cooper? She asked, extending her hand. Jessica Reynolds. I shook her hand. Please call me Ethan. What can I do for you, Ms. Reynolds? She sat down, her posture straight and professional. It's not what you can do for me, Ethan. It's what I can do for you. I specialize in cases involving corruption and organized crime. And from what I've seen, you're in the middle of a very dangerous situation. I leaned back, studying her. And why do you want to help me? Jessica's eyes flashed. Because I've seen too many people get away with this kind of behavior. The rich and powerful thinking they're above the law. It's time someone stood up to them. I nodded slowly. All right, I'm listening. What do you propose? For the next hour, Jessica laid out a plan. She would represent me legally, helping to navigate the complex web of lawsuits and countersuits that were sure to come. More importantly, she had connections with federal prosecutors who were interested in the case. This goes beyond a simple scandal, Ethan, she explained. We're talking about RICO charges, potential indictments of public officials. But it's going to be a long, hard fight. I met her gaze steadily. I'm not afraid of a fight. She smiled, a sharp, predatory expression. Good. Because they're going to throw everything they have at you. As we parted ways, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. With Jessica on my side, I finally had a clear path forward. Over the next few weeks, the case exploded. David Cross was indicted on multiple federal charges. Vanessa Miller turned state's witness, revealing a complex web of fraud and embezzlement that reached into several major corporations. Sophie Lang's husband went public with damning evidence of her infidelities and drug use. And Lila was a ghost. She had disappeared from public view, her social media account silent. Part of me wondered where she was, what she was doing. But I pushed those thoughts aside. I couldn't afford to be distracted now. One evening, as I was reviewing documents with Jessica in my hotel room, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Sam, looking haggard and nervous. "Ethan, we need to talk," he said, pushing past me into the room. Jessica stood up. "Who's this?" "It's okay," I assured her. "This is Sam, my friend. He's been helping me." Sam paced the room. "Ethan, things are getting out of control. I've been getting threats. Someone broke into my office last night. I felt a chill run down my spine. Are you okay? Did they take anything?" He shook his head. "I'm fine. And no, they didn't get anything important. But Ethan, this is serious. These people, they're not playing around." Jessica stepped forward. "Mr. Sam, was it? I'm Jessica Reynolds, Ethan's attorney. I think it's time we brought you under our legal protection as well." Sam looked at her, then at me. "Legal protection? Ethan, what have you gotten yourself into?" I put a hand on his shoulder. "We're doing the right thing, Sam. We're exposing the truth." He laughed, a bitter sound. "The truth? Ethan, do you even remember why we started this? It was about Lila, about what she did to you. Now look at us. We're taking on the mob, for Christ's sake." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. He was right. How had things spiraled so far out of control? Jessica cleared her throat. "Gentlemen, I understand this is personal for both of you, but we need to stay focused. We're on the verge of breaking open one of the biggest corruption cases this city has ever seen. We can't back down now." I looked at Sam, saw the fear in his eyes. Then I thought of Lila's mocking laughter, of David's smug face. "She's right," I said. "We can't stop now. Sam, I'm sorry you got dragged into this, but we're doing the right thing. We have to see it through." Sam stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, but Ethan, be careful. Don't lose yourself in this." As Sam left, I turned to Jessica. "He's right, you know. This has gotten so much bigger than I ever intended." She put a hand on my arm, her touch surprisingly gentle. "That's often how these things go, Ethan. But you've started something important, something that could make a real difference." I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. Behind her professional demeanor, I saw a passion, a determination that matched my own. "Thank you," I said softly, "for everything." She smiled, a real smile this time, not the sharp, predatory one I'd seen before. "We're in this together now, Ethan, all the way to the end." As I lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, I thought about how much my life had changed in just a few short weeks. I had lost my wife, my home, my sense of security, but I had gained something too. A purpose, a mission. And as I drifted off to sleep, I realized that for the first time since that fateful night, I felt something like hope. The morning sun streamed through the hotel room curtains, waking me from a fitful sleep. I reached for my phone, scrolling through the notifications that had accumulated overnight. More news about the scandal, more revelations, more arrests. A knock at the door startled me. I opened it to find Jessica, her usual professional demeanor tinged with excitement. "Ethan, we've got something big," she said, pushing past me into the room. The feds are moving in on David Cross today. They're going to flip him. I blinked, trying to process the information. Flip him? You mean? He's going to talk, Jessica confirmed. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he's going to give up everyone. Politicians, judges, business leaders. It's going to be a bloodbath. I sat down heavily on the bed. Jesus, what do we do now? Jessica's eyes gleamed. Now? Now we prepare for the storm. Because once David starts talking, all hell is going to break loose. We spent the next few hours strategizing, preparing statements, and coordinating with Jessica's contacts in the prosecutor's office. By mid-afternoon, the news had broken. David Cross, in a dramatic turn of events, had agreed to cooperate with federal authorities. My phone buzzed. A text from Lila. Turn on the TV. Now. Curious, I flicked on the news. My jaw dropped as I saw Lila on the screen, standing at a podium surrounded by reporters. What the hell? I muttered. Jessica moved closer, her eyes narrowing. What is she doing? On the screen, Lila began to speak, her voice steady but her eyes wild. I know many of you have questions about the recent events involving my husband, Ethan Cooper, and our friends. I'm here to set the record straight. I leaned forward, my heart pounding. Ethan Cooper is not the victim he claims to be, Lila continued. He is a manipulative, vindictive man who has orchestrated this entire scandal for his own gain. Jessica cursed under her breath. She's trying to get ahead of the story. Discredit you before David's testimony goes public. I barely heard her, my eyes glued to the screen as Lila continued her character assassination. Ethan has always been jealous of our success, of our friends. When he discovered our indiscretion, he saw an opportunity for revenge. He has fabricated evidence, manipulated the media, and used his connections to destroy innocent lives. I felt a surge of anger. Innocent? Is she serious? Jessica put a hand on my arm. Don't let her get to you, Ethan. This is a desperate move. On the screen, Lila's eyes seemed to bore into me. I'm calling on the authorities to investigate Ethan Cooper, to look into his finances, his relationships. You'll find that he is the real criminal here. As Lila finished her statement, the room erupted into a frenzy of questions from reporters. I turned off the TV, my hands shaking with rage. That lying, manipulative. I couldn't even finish the sentence. Jessica was already on her phone. I'm calling the prosecutor's office. We need to get ahead of this. I paced the room, my mind racing. She's trying to turn this around on me. Make me the bad guy. Jessica looked up from her phone. It won't work, Ethan. We have too much evidence. David's testimony will bury them all. I stopped pacing, a thought striking me. Unless what? Jessica asked, her voice sharp. Unless this is a distraction, I said slowly. What if they're trying to buy time? To destroy evidence or get people out of the country before David talks? Jessica's eyes widened. Shit, you might be right. She was back on her phone in an instant. We need to move now. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Jessica coordinated with the prosecutors and FBI, pushing them to move faster. I worked with Sam, combing through our files for any information that might help. As night fell, we got the news we'd been waiting for. David Cross had begun his testimony, and it was even more damning than we'd hoped. I sat in Jessica's office, watching the news unfold on her computer screen. David, looking haggard and defeated, spilled secret after secret. Names were named, deals were exposed, a vast network of corruption laid bare. We did it, I murmured, almost in disbelief. Jessica squeezed my shoulder. You did it, Ethan. You started all of this. I looked up at her, saw the admiration in her eyes. For a moment, I felt a flicker of something, attraction, connection, but I pushed it aside. Now wasn't the time. What happens now? I asked. Jessica sat down next to me. Now? Now the real work begins. Trials, testimonies, more investigations. This is going to ripple out for years. I nodded slowly. And Lila? The others? They'll be brought in for questioning, Jessica said. Lila's little press conference stunt might even be used against her. Obstruction of justice, maybe? I leaned back in my chair, feeling a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. It's really over, isn't it? Jessica smiled, a rare, genuine expression. This part is over. But Ethan, you've started something big here. Something important. Are you ready for what comes next? I met her gaze, feeling a surge of determination. Bring it on. As we sat there, watching the news continue to unfold, I realized that this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about Lila and her betrayal. This was about justice, about exposing the truth no matter the cost. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly alive. The weeks following David Cross's testimony were a whirlwind of activity. Arrests were made, indictments were handed down, and the city was in an uproar. Through it all, Jessica and I worked tirelessly, providing evidence, giving statements, and navigating the complex legal landscape. One morning, as I sat in Jessica's office reviewing documents, she burst in, a triumphant gleam in her eyes. "We've got her, Ethan," she announced. "Lila's been arrested." I stood up, my heart racing. What? When? This morning. The feds picked her up at her parents' house. Turns out she was more involved in David's schemes than we thought. I sank back into my chair, a mix of emotions washing over me. What happens now? Jessica sat on the edge of her desk. Now we prepare for the trial. It's going to be big, Ethan. Your testimony will be crucial. I nodded slowly. I'm ready. Whatever it takes to see justice done. Over the next few months, I worked closely with Jessica and the prosecutors, preparing for the trial. We spent long hours going over evidence, practicing my testimony, and strategizing. One evening, as we were wrapping up a particularly grueling session, Jessica looked at me with a soft expression. "You know, Ethan, I've never seen anyone handle this kind of pressure the way you have. You're remarkable." I felt a warmth spread through my chest. "I couldn't have done it without you, Jessica. You've been amazing." She smiled, and for a moment, the professional facade dropped. I saw the woman behind the lawyer, and I felt drawn to her in a way I hadn't felt in years. "Jessica, She held up a hand. "Ethan, wait. Let's get through this trial first. Then we can talk about what comes next." I nodded, understanding. We had to stay focused. There would be time for personal matters later. The trial was a media sensation. Day after day, I sat in the courtroom, watching as Lila, David, and their co-conspirators were exposed for what they truly were. When it was my turn to testify, I felt a calm resolve settle over me. "Mr. Cooper," the prosecutor began, "can you tell us about the night you discovered your wife's infidelity?" I took a deep breath and began to speak. I told the court everything, from the canceled flight to the shocking scene I had walked in on. I described the mocking laughter, the cruel words, the utter humiliation I had felt. As I spoke, I could feel Lila's eyes on me, but I didn't look at her. She no longer had any power over me. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the verdicts came in. Guilty. All of them. Lila, David, Vanessa, Sophie, Rachel. They were all going to prison. As we left the courthouse, reporters swarmed around us. "Mr. Cooper, how do you feel about the verdict?" I looked at Jessica, who nodded encouragingly. "Justice has been served," I said firmly. "Not just for me, but for everyone who was hurt by their actions. It's time for our city to heal and move forward." Later that night, Jessica and I sat in her office, sharing a bottle of champagne. "We did it," she said, raising her glass. "You did it, Ethan." I clinked my glass against hers. "We did it together." She set down her glass and looked at me intently. "Ethan, I think it's time we had that talk." I felt my heart rate quicken. "I agree. These past months, working with you, I've never met anyone like you, Ethan. Your strength, your determination, your integrity. I've developed feelings for you." I reached out and took her hand. "Jessica, I feel the same way. You've been my rock through all of this. I don't know what I would have done without you." She smiled, a brilliant, genuine smile that lit up her whole face. "So, what do you say? Are you ready for a new beginning?" I leaned in and kissed her, soft and sweet. "I'm more than ready." Just as life seemed to be settling into a new normal, everything changed again. It was a quiet Sunday morning when I got the call from Sam. "Ethan, turn on the news. Now." I flicked on the TV, and my jaw dropped. There was Lila, standing outside the prison, surrounded by reporters. "What the hell?" I muttered. Jessica, who had been staying over, came to stand beside me. "What's going on?" On the screen, Lila began to speak. "I have new evidence that will exonerate me and expose the real criminal behind all of this, Ethan Cooper." I felt the blood drain from my face. What is she talking about? Jessica was already on her phone. "I'm calling the DA. This has to be some kind of trick." But over the next few days, it became clear that Lila and David had one last card to play. They claimed to have evidence that I had orchestrated the entire scandal, manipulating events to frame them. "It's ridiculous," I fumed to Jessica. "They're desperate. No one will believe them." But doubt had been sown. The media, always hungry for a new angle, began to question my role in the events. Old friends started to distance themselves. Even Sam seemed unsure. "Ethan," he said one day, his voice hesitant, "you'd tell me if there was any truth to this, right? If you had done anything?" I stared at him, hurt and angry. "How can you even ask me that, Sam? After everything we've been through?" He held up his hands. "I'm sorry, I had to ask." As the pressure mounted, I felt myself starting to crack. Had I gone too far in my quest for revenge? Had I crossed a line somewhere? Jessica remained my steadfast supporter. "We'll fight this, Ethan," she assured me. "We have the truth on our side." But the truth, I was learning, was a fragile thing. Easy to distort, easy to question. It all came to a head one rainy night. I was alone in my apartment, Jessica having gone to meet with the DA. There was a knock at the door. When I opened it, I found Lila standing there. "Hello, Ethan," she said, her voice cold. "We need to talk." I let her in, my mind racing. What was she doing here? Lila paced the room, looking around with disdain. "How the mighty have fallen," she sneered. "What do you want, Lila?" I asked, my voice tight. She turned to face me, her eyes hard. "I want you to confess, Ethan. Admit that you set us up, that you manipulated everything." I laughed bitterly. "You're delusional, Lila. You did this to yourself. You and your friends." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Are you sure about that, Ethan? Are you sure you didn't go too far? Didn't let your anger, your need for revenge, push you to do things you never thought you were capable of?" For a moment, just a moment, I felt a flicker of doubt. Had I gone too far? But then I remembered the night I had walked in on them. The laughter, the mockery, the utter disregard for my feelings. "Get out, Lila," I said, my voice cold. "You've lost. Accept it and move on." She stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked to the door. But before she left, she looked back at me. "This isn't over, Ethan. Not by a long shot." After she left, I called Jessica. "Lila was just here," I told her. "She tried to get me to confess to setting them up." Jessica's voice was sharp with concern. "Ethan, we need to be careful. They're getting desperate. There's no telling what they might do." She was right. Over the next few weeks, Lila and David's accusations grew more outlandish. They claimed I had bribed witnesses, fabricated evidence, even threatened people into testifying against them. But their desperate ploy backfired. As their claims grew more ridiculous, people began to see through them. The tide of public opinion turned back in my favor. It all came to a head in a dramatic court hearing. Lila and David's lawyers presented their evidence, which turned out to be nothing more than hearsay and conjecture. Jessica tore their arguments apart, exposing their claims for the desperate lies they were. In the end, the judge not only dismissed their claims, but charged them with perjury and attempting to pervert the course of justice. As we left the courthouse for the last time, Jessica took my hand. "It's really over now, Ethan," she said softly. "You won." I looked at her, this amazing woman who had stood by me through it all. "No," I said, squeezing her hand. "We won." We walked down the courthouse steps together, into a future that was bright with possibilities. The road had been long and hard, but I had come through it stronger. I had exposed the truth, seen justice done, and found love in the most unexpected place. As we drove away, leaving the courthouse and all it represented behind, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The chapter of my life that had begun with betrayal and pain was finally closed. A new one, full of hope and promise, was just beginning. And this time, I was ready for whatever challenges it might bring. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.